Little Nightmares 2. Yeah, this is actually a relatively new release because it was released back in 2021. Yeah, compared to some of the other games I played, that's relatively new. And actually, it's more of a prequel than it is a sequel. Um, but it does use a lot of the mechanics that made the first one a charming little game. To be honest, I actually enjoyed this, though it takes a little bit longer to complete. Now, this is a game where you don't play as Six. You play as a figure known as Mono. Boy wears a paper bag over his head. And actually, the game has a larger area if you want to think of it that way. You take it longer to complete because, honestly, some of the areas are a little bit more difficult than what was in Little Nightmares 1. I mean, when you start the game, you're sort of out near in the wilderness area, which is actually a pretty good starting area. You're moving through a wooded area, avoiding some traps that were set out by, I'm guessing, a figure that's only known as the Hunter. In fact, you find his shack at some point, and inside you find a young girl. Her identity will become known as we move on here. You already know. Well, of course, you're nodding your head. Now, of course, since this thing, which keeps up with the trend that almost everything is bigger than these kids, literally. Um, so you're, you know, making your way, escaping the hunter, going through the wilderness. I mean, eventually you do get to a point where you trap and kill the hunter. And of course, there's also something else. As you are playing this game and moving along, you run across these like shadow children, which the game calls glitches. This should, this is, I think, naming convention comes in as you make some progress in the game. But once you escape the hunter, you get onto like a raft of some sort. I think it's actually a door. And sail across from the wilderness to what is dubbed the Pale City. To be honest, this place is more like a shell in some ways. And then you're working your way through it. Of course, at this time, you start encountering TVs, which has a very strange effect on Mono. I mean, when he gets near one and he touches, you start to, quote, get an image of a door with an eye on it. And once you're able to set the signal straight, you actually enter the sort of like a dream state or something, where you start heading towards this door. Of course, our female friend manages to snap us out of it as we get closer and closer to that. But We then meet up and we enter a school. That's the loosest term I have for this. I mean, it's possible it's like a boarding school or something like that, but as you enter, I mean, this place is booby trapped. And you have your typical bullies running around. These bullies have heads of porcelain, which, if you shatter them, of course, it kills them. I mean, they snatch away your friend, and now you got to try and find her. But add to it the threat of the bullies, you also have the teacher. Now, she's creepy looking to start with, even though she seems pretty much human. Until her neck extends. God, that's disturbing. I mean, when you are up against, when she's coming after you, she doesn't even have to move fast. She just has her head. I swear. It's creepy ass. Now, of course, you're outrunning her. You don't kill her. There's like only two real major antagonists in this game that you kill. But you must outrun her. You must defeat these porcelain bullies. This section was not as bad as the next section. But as you're getting through the school and you find your friend again and you both manage to get out, you come across a small area where your friend finds a yellow raincoat. Yep, she's 6. Now, we know who our partner is. And this should be actually the first point where we get tipped off that this is a prequel. Because at the end of Little Nightmares, I think basically 6 is now taken over the mall, which is like a floating restaurant. Anyhow, once we get through that part, we come to a hospital. This time when we get split up, it's more or less by necessity. This is probably about one of the more trying areas of the game I have ever encountered. Because in the upper floors of the hospital, you have the patients. And some creepy thing wannabes. These animated hands that run around like skittering spiders. They were a handful. And I don't mean that as a pun, even though it sounds it. I mean, I smashed the things a few times. I didn't know I got an achievement for doing it too. But once it was eliminated, then we really get into the creepy stuff. Mannequin-like patience that will not move if you're looking at them or shining a light on them. Oh my God. This was the most trying part of the game for me. Because you start with like one, and then you get to a point where there's two, and a third, and then a shitload. I mean, for me, if I'm trying to look for stuff, I'm not taking time to look for it if I've got about 20 damn things running after me. And that's a thing, actually. There are these glitches, like I said about them, that are remnants of children that are all over the place in this game. And if you collect them, it would lead to a special ending. Anyhow, of course, you're outrunning these Megans all to get a fuse to help run an elevator. And to really make some things difficult, you have to trigger some of these when you're in a certain area because you need them triggered so you can advance. Enough to make you go, God damn it. I need to. I mean, for some, you have to take some drastic measures. Now, of course, like if you've got like a real powerful light on them, they don't move. Now, once, of course, you get past all them and you get the fuses you need, you go down to the lower levels of the hospital, and this is where the doctor is. The doctor boggles my mind as the doctor is on the more heavy side, can nab you, and he sorts of walks, traverses on the ceiling. I mean, honestly, with the state of the building, I don't know how the hell the ceiling stays up. Him clinging around on the ceilings. Now, once you enter or leave the hospital, you really get into the residential area of the Pale City. And after an interaction with one television, Six gets abducted. Because in your past interactions, you always try to get to the end of this hall with this door with an eye on it. And at the end of the one, just at the beginning of your venturing into the Pale City, you reach the end of the hall. And you find your main antagonist, the Thin Man. I mean, I sort of understand why they've dubbed him the Thin Man. And while he is a lanky gentleman and on the tall side, let's face it, the tall man has been anonymously has been linked. The term "the tall man" has been linked with the Phantasm series of movies and the character portrayed by late Angus Scrimm. So I figure Thin Man they can get away with without having to deal with anything like copyrights, which is kind of appropriate. So the Thin Man chases you, and when you come out of the TV, he starts coming out of the TV, so you and Six sort of run for a hiding spot. Unfortunately, Six doesn't pick a good one because the Thin Man snatches her away. So now you must head through the residential area. You also find out Mono now has a new ability. He can teleport from one TV to another. The trick is getting the residents away from the television so you can do that. I mean, if they're watching a television, they're pretty harmless unless you come into their view. And it's already bad enough that all these TVs are the old cathode ray tube types. Although, you get the feeling for that. Well, once you manage to defeat, get past all the residential areas, including a slightly difficult getting to one television set by way of moving a shopping cart into the middle of a flooded area, flooded floor, while electricity turns uh, that all the water down there into a death trap. Of course, you got to turn the electricity off to get the cart into position, because you can't make it to the TV otherwise. But you need to have the cart in position so you can get to the TV when it's on. Well, after a few transports, we get a chase from the Thin Man. And we've gotten his attention as Mono, and now you have a race to outrun him. Eventually getting to a point where you do lose him, and you see a glitch of 6 sort of leading you, and you have to have a confrontation with the Thin Man. The Thin Man and Mono seem to have similar powers. So Mono is sort of matching his powers. I mean, it's at this point that Mono removes the paper bag over his head, and although you never really get a good clear shot of his face, this means something. Now, after you have the battle with the Thin Man and defeat him, you bring the signal tower to you, which was basically the Thin Man's base of operations. Or maybe he was the servant of it. I don't know. I mean, as the place starts to, quote, crumble, you have fleshy walls underneath the facade of a building. Well, you make your way through it. Dealing with a game of follow the music. And if you make a wrong choice, you're literally restarting it. And sometimes you have to make the wrong choice to set things up for the right choice. But after going up and through some crazy hallways that make you reminiscent of some of the insanity that was in old cartoons and in some live action shows, the old guy runs into door A on left side of hall. Chaser comes over, follows him into door A. Person being chased comes out door B on the other side of the hall. Runs up to door C at the other end of the hall on the same side and goes in it. Then comes out door D, which is closer to you on the left, closer to the viewer on the left side of the hall than door A is. Runs into door C again and comes out at door E on the other side of the hall. You know, that kind of crazy shenanigans. But after that, you encounter Six, and Six has been warped into this monstrous thing, and you must destroy her music box. This is not an easy feat, but once you're able to accomplish it with some interesting little interludes until you get to the next part of the battle, you and Six start to escape the crumbling tower with this gigantic fleshy wall trying to crush you. And after a leap of faith that Six manages to make and you barely make, in fact, the only thing keeping you from falling is Six holding onto you, Six drops you. And this is sort of the ending part of the game, because as Mono wanders through a fleshy mass, it's not trying to kill him, he comes across a chair. And in a very nicely played twist, you see Mono age, get older, get taller, get thinner, as Mono grows into the form of the Thin Man. And now everything sort of makes sense. Somehow, probably the nature of the tower itself, I don't know. Mono is now the very thin man that he fought. Even the game acknowledges that he is, in the end, the Thin Man. This adds so many new levels to what this could mean. Now, if you catch all the glitches, you are supposed to get an extra part to the ending after this, in which you see Six looking at an image of the mall. But there's some sort of sinister feel to her. As if, well, given what you know of, if you've played Little Nightmares and gotten to the end of it, of course, you know what ends up happening. So, if it raises any questions, doesn't raise a lot of them, in my opinion. Or it does. And that is basically this game in a nutshell. Like I said, there are some fight-wise, as you play through the game, most of the levels are all levels are pretty intuitive on what you must do. And if you fail to try and complete them, that's only signs that you learn. I have not watched many playthroughs of this one, but I know of things. And I still was learning. And I think that's the key part of like a platform like this. Certain things are a puzzle. You can't run and beat up all your foes. Although beating up those hands was very satisfying. It allows some intuitiveness and deduction of what you need to do. And with the game completed, I am happy that I completed the game. Now, I do know that there is a third in the mix. And I'll try to pick that up whenever it comes out. This was a great game by itself, too. With the obvious exception of the hospital part where you're outrunning the mannequin-like patients. Yeah, if you've watched through the complete series, you hear me rage about that. That was actually the hardest part of the game, in my opinion. Well, that and trying to get the axe around to smash the music box in the one part of the 6 encounters. But, like I said, it's a great game. I recommend playing it. Even if horror isn't your thing, the concept behind the game is still charming, like the first one. I'd recommend it. I'd recommend in giving it a playthrough. And that's all I'm going to say about Little Nightmares 2. Next one of these videos, I'm just going to talk about the series as a whole to date. So, come check that out. And until next time, again, this is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere. Bye!